Hey YouTubes, Geoffrey here on Nitharoi. I am standing in front of the entrance to a trail that leads up into the forest. There's a little workout area up there and a whole maze of trails through the forest where I have done a workout every morning for the past 3 weeks, except for this morning when I did 12 kilometers around Oslo. And that's why I'm not running it right now, because I'm walking back. I just took the train down from Oslo. Colleen's gonna stay there another night, and then she's headed back to Germany. But on the way back, I listened to a podcast, which is posted on the Jordan B. Peterson podcast feed, if you are so curious. And it was a debate between Dr. Peterson and Susan Blackmore. Blackmore is an evolutionary biologist from England. I'm not entirely sure about a lot of her background, but I know she is a professed atheist, and so in the debate, the two of them were discussing the proposition that one requires God to have meaning in their life, or something along those lines. And Peterson, a very religious fellow, he has a different definition of religious than some people might, but anyway, he was definitely defending the affirmative and Blackmore defending the negative. And I have listened to Peterson quite a lot over the last year and grown very sympathetic to his arguments, even though I too, like Blackmore, am a professed atheist. I don't accept the teachings of the organized religions that are out there. I've tried to take the things that seemed useful and practical and meaningful from them, but as entire systems, I've been extremely skeptical, and as have a growing number of us. Pretty much since the Enlightenment have a growing number of us had that position, and it's become more and more accepted until places like Scandinavia, where I am now, it's kind of just the norm that you don't really believe in God. And those that do, or have some form of personal God, don't really flaunt it. They don't go out and proselytize very often. It's pretty rare to run into those people in this kind of community. But Peterson has started to convince me that they're not just arbitrary memes that have survived through humanity in some kind of parasitic manner, but really it's been a symbiosis between humanity and the ideas espoused by the world's great religions, and especially for those of us in the West, we really can't divorce ourselves from the Judeo-Christian doctrines. They are so deep within us that they certainly predate the writings of the Bible itself. And so for the podcast, Peterson basically just reframed the debate and offered a definition that really God is whatever gives meaning to your life. So in that sense, he certainly couldn't lose the debate, because Blackmore did not do a very good job of refuting that point. But his real message was that even for those of us who claim to be atheists, he made a pretty solid case that we're not actually acting it out. And that makes a lot of sense if you do some of your own investigation, and Buddhist teachings tend to lead people here, that you start to realize that what you kind of think of as yourself, what you think of as your cognition, your ego, is not necessarily in control of what you're actually doing. That there are a lot of systems that are much more deeply ingrained in our brains that are far more powerful than that little voice inside our head that says, this is why I'm doing this, or this is why I'm doing that. There are systems that have evolved over millions of years to control what we actually do. And for the vast majority of us, what we actually do is quite religious, in that we actually get up and do things. We actually go about our day and complete tasks that we feel are important to complete. And that idea is something that maybe is a little bit radical, but it's something worth pondering, because if you can take the position that religion is not true from any perspective, really, and if you try to replace it with some kind of ethical value system, some kind of moral code, and you can see all of the different moral codes that are out there, then they all become somewhat arbitrary. And following that to its logical extreme quickly leads to nihilism, to the idea that, well, nothing really matters, that any value system, any ideal that we set up is completely arbitrary. It's meaningless. So why do anything? So someone who is really an atheist, who really accepts that there is no religious structure that is real, that is worth following, that is worth believing, that person won't do anything. Because why? Why get up? Why expend any energy other than just feeding yourself? And I think a lot of us do a lot more than that. And I suppose that even though a lot of us do kind of hold on to that, it's a skeleton, it's a shell, or whatever metaphor you want to use. It's something that has been passed down to us through our DNA for millions of years, but it's not something that we really stand upon from a cognitive perspective, from a conscious perspective would be a better word. And I think that's what Nietzsche was really warning against, is that now that we have undermined the teachings of religious doctrine, we've started creating societies that are built on value systems that may have their roots in religious traditions, but they don't actually follow them. And when people start seeing through that, they start losing a reason to follow the value system at all. And it becomes very hard to maintain a society, to maintain a culture that doesn't take anything on faith. So for those of us who claim to be atheists, who claim not to follow any major religions, begs the question, what do we believe in? What do we take on faith? Is there anything that we really should just take on faith? And if we don't, why are we doing what we're doing? And is there a good reason for it? Does there need to be a good reason for it? Or can we let our genes take over? That's something to chew on.